What's up, guys? Welcome to the new video. Today we will discuss the Serbian Prime Minister Nikola Pašić, who was one of the most important statesmen in 20th century Serbia. I hope that you will enjoy this presentation and that you will find this lecture useful. If you do like it, please show your appreciation for the video by dropping a like, subscribing to this channel, and by sharing this video. And without further ado, let's get into this presentation. Alright, so this slide is going to look at the liberals versus the radicals, elites versus the common people, constitutionalism as opposed to local self-determination. Before focusing our attention on Nikola Pašić, we need to get familiar with the political grammar of the period which he was prominent in. The inaugural multi-party system in Serbia was made crystal clear, revolving around two currents. Liberals, pro-Western, urban, urged for constitutional structures adopted from models seen in the rest of Europe. On the contrary, radicals claim to speak for the majority of the peasantry, being vociferous supporters of the self-government being granted to municipalities, as well as self-determination on a national level, against and as opposed to authoritarianism and bureaucracy. As Ivo Banac in 1984 argues, these two currents emerged within a political unit which was at the time still negotiating about the authorities of the dynasties, the influence of the church, and how effective and how limited inherently was administrative power. The radical movement, and Pašić became involved in it, thus were not completely the inventors of mass politics, but they channeled it and directed it in a specific way. The aim of this presentation is to showcase that Nikola Pašić was not only one of the most dominant politicians in the late 19th and early 20th century Serbia, but also the statesman who patented a distinctive Balkan path towards mass politics. He is the one who introduced the Serbian people to mass politics and effectively synthesized the mobilization of the peasantry, the program for the nation, as well as pragmatic politics and statecraft. In the presentation, it will be argued that the legacy of Pašić cannot be understood without acknowledging its dual function. The process of democratization, which is taking place from below, alongside persistent techniques of control and coercion directed from above, some of which might even be interpreted as authoritarian. Building on this, Pašić's career sits at the hinge between the designs of Greater Serbia and the eventual agreement to form a Yugoslav state, between the promise for the people to be represented and the customs of tutelary rule. Now, who was this guy? He was born in 1845 and he was educated as an engineer in Zurich. Pašić began a political career within the network that would eventually form the People's Radical Party in 1881. From the Timok Rebellion, 1883, to the constitutional era of after 1903, Pašić's career in politics oscillated up and down between being the opposition and being the one in power, and between being in exile and being the prime minister from 1913 to 1918. Historian Aleksandar Pavković in 1995 highlights Pašić's exceptional political elasticity, his doctrine of endurance weight that allowed him to survive longer than his political rivals, construct majorities in the parliament, and to come back into office when the circumstances allowed him to do so again. Historian John R. Lamp in 2000 positions Pašić within the longue durée of state building in the Yugoslav context, a statesman who fundamentally translated the energies and the tendencies of a primarily agricultural-based society into parliamentary contributions and formulas which are eligible to work in practice, while simultaneously never getting fully rid of the calculus of the aims of the nation and his overarching political agenda. This is a summary in a nutshell which illustrates the timeline of Pašić's political journey. Now, let's move to the origins of the Radical Party in terms of its program and base. The program of the radicals proposed and put forward combined three crucial elements. Firstly, the notion of national sovereignty, which is fundamentally opposition to tutelage by external factors and a language, as well as a mechanism of state independence. Secondly, self-administration on behalf of individual respective municipalities, at a fundamental level a promise that local communities, as opposed to bureaucrats, would mold how the municipality is being administered on a day-to-day basis. Thirdly, mass inclusion of peasants as political subjects. Banats in 1984 argues that this was the first stable and to an extent lasting articulation of constitutionalism on a national and popular scale in Serbia, even as the radicals were getting to grips with the management of elections, administering the media and the press, as well as patronage. In a nutshell, the radicals spoke the language of the common man, yet ruled with the conventional methods of the state from above. This is a crucial ambiguity which would leave a profound mark on Pašić's tenures as prime minister both at home and in international relations as well. Now, Pašić's doctrine of enduring weight in the context and aftermath of the 1903 May coup and the return of Pašić to power. The Constitution of 1888 put forward liberal modifications and amendments that reduced the authority of the crown and boosted the strength and legitimacy of parliament, and this led to a clash which occurred between Nikola Pašić and King Milan. After he went into exile, Pašić used this time to reconstruct political authority and influence and to return even stronger than prior to being forced in exile. Following the May 1903 coup and the decline of the dynasty of Obrenović, Nikola Pašić made a return to politics under the new Karađorđević dynasty. As historian Aleksandar Pavković in 1995 notes, Nikola Pašić became a master of balancing between the people and the elites, which transformed the radicals from merely being an opposition movement into being the crucial force of stability in Serbian political life. This is a quote from historian John R. Lamp on Nikola Pašić, where he argues that Pašić built mass democracy, but he never fully trusted it. In his 2000 book, Yugoslavia as History, Twice Was There a Country. As the Balkan Wars of 1912 to 1913 were unfolding, the leadership of Pašić transcended mobilizing the nation and started creeping into an era of strategic diplomacy. He maintained the rhetoric of freeing and uniting the South Slavs under the Serbian banner. However, at the same time, he followed a policy of cautious territorial expansion under the oversight and administration of the Serbian crown. As per Lamp's argument in 2000, the diplomacy of Pašić combined the nation's vision with the realpolitik, creating tenuous alliances with Greece and Bulgaria when expedient, only to break these promises and confront these former allies when the interests of Serbia were at stake. In the domain of international relations, Pašić was an ardent supporter of the right of Serbia to represent the South Slavs, but he never entirely relinquished the primacy and dominance of the Serbian state, showcasing again the dual function between promises embedded in democracy and, on the other hand, state centralism. In 1915, as the negotiations revolving around the Treaty of London were unfolding, the Entente in secret offered rewards in the form of territory to Italy at the expense of Serbia. The South Slavs were not consulted, putting Pašić face to face with the dilemma of a strategic nature, either to accept the possibility of a greater Serbia or to follow an unity based on Yugoslavism. So now we have essentially two problems on two distinct fronts facing Serbia at this time, unfortunately. On the one hand, the Entente, the allies, are betraying Serbia behind its back. Serbia showed heroism in battles such as Cer and Kolubara, and then at the negotiation table, the allies forgot about Serbia and, due to their interests, wanted to give these Adriatic territories to Italy. And on the other hand, Serbia also had the threat from Vienna, from Austria-Hungary. So Nikola Pašić fundamentally had to secure in some way a form of political protection for Serbia, and he wanted to work with the great powers. Rather than providing security for a tightly Serbian project, Pašić did not want to accept concessions that would release the grip on Adriatic claims, and instead fostered cooperation with the Yugoslav Committee. This situation shed light on the fundamental tension in Pašić's leadership, a national goal and agenda which was filtered through the lens of a supranational view. After 1915, Serbia's isolation forced it to seek survival through regional unity. Cooperation with the Yugoslav Committee and the Corfu Declaration of May 1917 marked a pragmatic, not idealistic shift. Unification was a strategic necessity, not a romantic vision. Serbia aimed to secure legitimacy and protection amid collapsing empires. This Yugoslav turn shows Pašić's realism, using ideology and South Slav unity to achieve security and diplomatic leverage. Pašić's legacy was both inclusive and strategic. His politics brought peasants into national life, embedding mass participation into governance. Serbia developed a parliamentary culture, though fragile, which contrasted with regional autocracies. Finally, Serbia's geopolitical role expanded, positioning it as the regional leader. Yet this success rested on balancing democracy at home with diplomacy abroad. Despite using the will of the people as a mask, Pašić was often opposed for manipulating certain institutions to consolidate his grip and control on these matters. Historians such as Đorđević, 1981, that's when the historian Đorđević wrote this scholarly literature, emphasize Pašić's utilization of applying pressure on election day, censoring the press and the media, and patronage networks to jeopardize the strength, influence, and unity of the opposition. Pašić's supposedly so-called peasant democracy was, as a result, frequently filtered via the means of control and tutelage. Even within the radicals themselves, politicians loyal to the leader were rewarded by being given positions in diplomacy and administration, making less clear-cut the line between inclusion in a democratic manner and, on the flip side, controlled participation. This inherent tension between mobilizing the masses and supervising the elites is fundamental in order to develop a well-rounded understanding of Pašić's legacy. Scholars are still divided with regards to Pašić's genuine contribution to the state building of Serbia and Yugoslavia. Banac in 1984 perceives him as a nationalist tactician who became a master of the language of the masses while at the same time protecting the authority of the state. Pavković in 1995 highlights the political patience of Pašić and his survival, putting forward the argument that Pašić, being so good at improvisation and adaptation, was the crucial element that contributed to institutional consolidation. However, on the other hand, Lamp in 2000 underscores the notion that Pašić is a bit of a transitional figure, the one who bridges early modern peasant society with the requirements of parliamentary governance. In unison, these perspectives illustrate how complex Pašić's statesmanship truly was. It was neither purely democratic nor completely authoritarian. Sabrina Ramet in 1996 additionally underlines Pašić's perspective of Yugoslavia at no point entirely took off from a Serbo-centric template, indicating that at the same time while Pašić acquired the language of unity, he maintained methods to achieve of central control entrenched in pre-World War I political culture of Serbia. The conclusion which is ultimately nuanced between democracy and control. In the conclusion, Pašić stands as a paradoxical ruler. On the one hand, he patented mass politics, but on the other hand, it was also him who entrenched methods of centralized power that allowed it to operate effectively. Pašić's political career demonstrates a quite unique Balkan combination in synthesis, mobilizing the ordinary peasantry, stimulating and encouraging Serbian national sovereignty, while simultaneously ruling through caution, quite tight control, mechanisms, and perhaps most importantly, the doctrine of enduring weight and resilience. To develop a full understanding of Pašić as a result requires transcending beyond simple categorizations. Pašić was neither a populist demagogue nor a democrat inspired by Enlightenment ideas, but he was rather a strategist who did everything to survive, and his legacy morphed both the establishment of a parliamentarian Serbian state and yet quite contradictory at the same time, the kingdom of the Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes that was about to come in December 1918. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. And here is the bibliography. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it enjoyable and useful. I love you all. I wish you all the best. Have an absolutely amazing day, and I look forward to seeing each other in the next video. If you liked this video, please appreciate the content by liking the video, sharing it, subscribing to this channel, and I hope ultimately that this was a useful and enjoyable experience for you. Thank you very much. All the best. See you in the next video. Bye bye.